Legends and Luminaries. I'm Julie, and welcome to Write Smart. Today, it is Hits, Flops, and Other Illusions, My 40-Something Years in Hollywood by Ed Zwick. I squealed when I found this book at Barnes & Noble, so I don't know how I missed it when it first came out. Ed Zwick is the creator of 30-Something and My So-Called Life, my two favorite shows of all time. It wasn't until years later that I learned he was responsible for Legends of the Movie, a movie that would make it into my top 10 movies of all time. I also didn't realize he was the one behind Defiance, a movie I also loved. I've said it 100 times, and I'll say it again. I think the universe speaks through me through books. I find the right books at the right time. Not only does this book give me more pop culture reminders, but it adds to the inspiration, the artistry of creating and writing. Remember, we're only one decision away from a masterpiece at all times. And oh, what inspiration is in this book. So I figured out why I like Zwick's work so much. So let me read you this. And it's towards the beginning. And he is talking about 30-something. We couldn't have known it then, but it was in that moment of absurdity and heartbreak, of reckoning with confusion and celebration, that 30-something was born. It wasn't until some months later that we realized we couldn't rest on our laurels forever, that this might be a good moment to cash in on our success with a paycheck or two. So we began to think in concrete terms about doing a television series. After more than a year playing around with hackneyed ideas about spies and epic heroes, detectives, and family shows, it occurred to us there might be something to write about in what had befallen us the year before. In Hellenistic Egypt, alchemists claimed to be able to transform base metal into gold. They call it transmutation. It was, of course, impossible. But isn't this what a writer presumes to do when he conjures up ordinary experiences and tries to magically transform it into the splendor of art? Pasted into one of my notebooks is a George Booth cartoon I clipped from the New Yorker at the time. Sitting at a desk before an old typewriter is an unshaven, frustrated writer, obviously blocked. Surrounding him are a collection of mangy dogs. Large dogs, small dogs, the flea-bitten and the feckless. Behind him in the doorway stands his long-suffering wife. You can almost hear her shrill voice as she bitches him out. "Write about dogs," she said. And so we did. He takes the immediate world around him and he creates something from it, sometimes not too far from the reality of it. Now, I know most artists do this, but there's something about his work that really strikes the emotional part of life. He writes later on that action and comic book characters are what everyone wants to see right now at the theater, and that we're missing those adult emotional moments and we don't explore those like we used to. The landscape has changed. That made me realize why I don't watch as many movies as I used to. It's difficult for me to find a movie to watch some nights. I don't want action or anything that was a comic book character. I don't want horror movies. At times, I have 3 or 4 streaming services and I literally cannot find a movie that I want to watch. Now I understand why. So Zwick writes about Making Glory, which I didn't know he directed until many years later. We watched it in school. I always knew there was a reason I didn't like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I just never liked Matthew Broderick in that role, and boy, did he and his mom give Zwick a hard time. Zwick describes when Brad Pitt had a small role on 30-something, which I remember well. Zwick read Jim Harrison's novella Legends of the Fall and then adapted it. I didn't read the story until years later, but now I understand how those creative changes came about. The book is pretty short to get an epic like Legends of the Fall out of it, and I had no idea the drama behind Shakespeare in Love, nor of Zwick's involvement in it. I had no idea that Julia Roberts was supposed to be in it, and that it coincided with the infamous love triangle between her and Kiefer Sutherland and Jason Patric, a tabloid event that I followed thanks to my obsession with The Lost Boys. I can't believe actors would behave so rudely. I wouldn't survive a minute in Hollywood. I adored reading about the creative process, anyone's really, but most especially the creator of my beloved 30-something. It was fascinating to read about how those stories originated, how they grew and blossomed and came into what we see on the big or small screen. I could never be an actor, but sometimes when I read about directors and their process, I would have enjoyed doing that, I think, assuming I had the appropriate personality to be a director, which I don't. Editing might have been a good choice for me too. I love making home movies, and when I do that, I'm like Ken Burns, matching every beat of the music to what's showing on the screen. Zwick held himself accountable for his own bad behavior at times, so that was refreshing to read. Books like Zwick's fuel my own creative process and ideas, and I find myself writing with more conviction and purpose and pizzazz than I did before I started reading the book. Zwick's book is one I'm keeping, not because of its 30-something connection, although that helps, but because it's one of those books that I can return to find those missing pieces I need when I need them. The creative spark, the inspiring fuel, the desire to keep going no matter how small an audience I may end up with. If you love movies or TV or writing, you have to read Hits, Flops, and Other Illusions. Yes, I wish Zwick would have spent a little bit more time describing the writing aspect and a little less on directing, but it's a must-have for any artist out there or any creator. It's also a must-have for a movie lover. The behind-the-scenes stuff that happens, the collaborative effort it takes to get the movie into what we see, insider information on actors' work, it's just amazing. Such memoirs remind us that every movie and TV show is a miracle in its own little way, a creative force that took time and artistry. I have to read this last section before I close out the episode. And so he's talking about what it means to be successful. So that the movie has now been taught for years in school is one of the things that makes me most proud. It's glory. After all this time, I have come to understand that there are 4 ways to measure a movie's success, and the first 3 don't count. Box office is a false accounting, critics no longer matter, and awards are forgotten within days. Time is the only measure. Thanks for watching. As always, my goal at Write Smart is to write books so that we can read books and get a little bit smarter one book